I don't know if I'm in sync with anything these days.
Oh, that'd be quite a feat.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be 91 and humid today in New York, by the way.
Oh my gosh. I don't envy you. This is Lawrence Lewis.
And this is Sister Christian.
Today is Thursday, July 2nd, 2020. This is the Producer's Happy Hour, a podcast with two producers on opposite coasts. Christian's in New York, I'm in Los Angeles, and we are learning what it means to be a good producer while we come out of a global shutdown of our industry and try to figure out how to get the film industry back to work safely while navigating the still existing coronavirus.
We find ourselves being asked to take on greater responsibilities from a variety of guidelines created by multiple sources. Now more than ever, it's important for us to keep sharing our experiences, our ideas, and, our hopes for the future.
And we want to hear from you, so email us, or better yet, record a 1 to 2 minute voice memo and send it to producershappyhour@gmail.com. Let us know if you're working, let us know if you've done a shoot in these crazy restrictions, and how you managed set safety.
And please share the show with your friends, colleagues, family, neighbors. We want the stories to be heard. Definitely go and like us, because we need to be liked.
Everybody needs to be liked. Christian, today we're chatting with First AD and producer Jason Manz, who recently shot a job down in Florida.
I know you just said spoke with or chatted with. I think we interrogated him, basically.
We interrogated. It is true. It is true.
In a good way.
Lots of good information. So stick around, check it out. But, now that we're a weekly podcast, Christian, we've got a few things to talk about because...
A lot.
Man, these weeks.
You remember that? Do you remember, it's been a little bit, so just go back, folks. Just remember the time when we used to use a term called room tone? We'd have to start over again if people, few people
Somebody made noise.
Made a noise.
You'd need 30 seconds of clean room tone. We don't do this anymore, really, but
I know.
It's fun when you get a sound mixer who still wants that. But if you mess up, you start over.
Yeah, if you mess up, you start over. We've spoken about Florida. We've spoken about Texas. We've spoken about other areas of the country that are open right now and filming, and how they're all having to dial it back a bit. And from what I heard out in LA, I know you guys are starting to film out there, that there are no plans of dialing that back, even though your numbers are starting to creep on up.
Yeah, they're dialing back in restaurant dining. They're dialing back bars.
The important
but
stuff.
There's the important stuff.
That didn't need to be open, but go on.
Yeah, there's no discussion about dialing back any sort of film production.
Yeah. I just want our people out there to be safe.
I do too, and I think there is a safe way to I don't know. I'm so perplexed by all these numbers because, the death rates are going down, which is great.
Yes.
Hospitalizations are creeping back up.
Yes,
That's
they
the
are.
scary part.
Mm-hmm.
But the studies have come back saying that the protests hadn't been really the source of many. I don't know how they test this, but I saw a report that said that it's more people having parties inside their homes, gatherings inside their homes.
Chickenpox parties.
But, maybe the outdoor activities are okay. So maybe film shoots outside is a safe way to do them.
Mm-hmm.
You see construction crews still operating, right? And
Yes.
we haven't heard much about construction people
And,
getting sick.
I have to say that, the majority of construction crews do have N95 masks. And I do feel like...
Not the ones by my house. They're Bandana City over there.
Oh, my.
Single ply.
Let me take that back and say what I did notice was the protests. The majority of everybody had masks.
Yes.
Seeing Dr. Fauci testify the other day, it's about the amount of time, 8 minutes is the amount of time that means you're in close contact with somebody. So between being outdoors and not hanging around the same people, strangers, and all of that seems to all make sense with why the protests were not a huge source of what is going on right now.
But I've been steadfastly looking at the numbers. I finally found on my city's website where the daily report comes in and it's how it's all laid out. And it's very informative, and it helps me cut through all the media talk and really look at what's happening. And we're definitely going up. Less fearful as the death rates decline.
Death rates decline. It looks like what's people getting sick now are between that sweet spot of 20 and 45.
Yeah.
And they weather it better. which
Yes.
is why the death rates, but they doesn't mean that they're out of the woods or not
Doesn't mean they're out of the
hospitalized.
woods. Exactly.
And so elective surgeries and Texas and Florida, like has now been dialed back in order to free up those hospital beds.
The city of Los Angeles created a new page on the website that is the COVID-19 threat level for our county or city. I'm looking
Very
right now.
9/11 reminiscent.
It's very 9/11, right? That's what I wanted to talk about. It's so reminiscent. But currently, we're at threat level orange, which is red's the highest, orange is the second highest, yellow and then green. And the indicator orange, we're at extremely high risk of infection, and residents should take precaution, assume you and everyone around you is infectious, and you should stay home.
So right now, near my house, I could go down to the local school and get a test for free. Anybody can. It sounds like you guys are running out of tests out there.
I can't get one, yeah.
After seeing the protest, a lot of people thought that, well, if nobody's getting sick here or if they can be out there, then I can too. And it's just not true, folks. So, well, I know that you have received this. I know that I've received it from 1,000 people, but dear Hollywood, we don't want to go back to normal. Normal wasn't working, says Zach Arnold.
Yes. Yes. And he's a podcaster himself. He has something called Optimize Yourself. He's definitely selling some sort of training program.
Of course.
Which is fine.
Hey, we all have to make money in this time.
We all have to make money in this time, yes. But yeah, in this article, he talks about the ridiculously long hours, the chronic sleep deprivation, the complete and utter lack of work-life balance, families, marriages, divorces that are, everything's destroyed because it's like this perpetual machine. We've said this before. It's a very self-absorbing career that we have. And yeah, I definitely was feeling the effects last year and was very happy to have the great pause.
Yes. Well, he points it all out, that stuff that we know, and I think that's why it spread like wildfire through our community, because it resonated so hard with everybody. Yeah,
absolutely.
I know.
If you haven't seen it yet, it's on his website, optimizeyourself.me, and the name of the article is Dear Hollywood, Normal Wasn't Working. Or that's at least the URL.
Exactly. So I actually do want to talk about this Facebook ad problem that has turned into a full-blown crisis.
According to Vice.
Yeah. Well, Vice is very good at grabbing your attention through their headlines.
Yeah.
So it began badly on Friday when Unilever, one of the world's biggest advertisers, announced it was joining Stop Hate for Profit campaign, which already has been backed by Verizon, Patagonia, and Ben & Jerry's. Now, side note, I did a Ben & Jerry's commercial in December, and I have to tell you, they mean everything that they say. The way that they spoke in Video Village was so pro equality. They feel it down to their bones, like the 60s. It just reminds me of hippies from the 60s era. And they're just out there doing good. So I understand them. Now Unilever tacking themselves on. I get it. So let's see if they follow up with action. We'll see. No judgment.
Yes. No judgment.
Sounded like a lot of judgment there, didn't it? We need to hold Unilever to the fire is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And then I think also Verizon, Patagonia, Coca-Cola, Diageo, who owns all the alcohol brands, that has been, supporting us through these last few months.
Exactly.
There's a point for this story. Rob, so don't take it out, our editor. I saw an ad by Stephen Colbert on Facebook this week. And I thought, interesting. He's well aware of all the problems in the world. Why is he paying for ads on Facebook?
Right.
So I tweeted at him several times and asked him to join the Stop Hate for Profit campaign, which, I have to say, I'm new to Twitter. I've had an account for years. I've never used it. I don't even look at it.
It's really weird.
But I've been tweeting.
Yes.
And honestly, I have a scheduling software, so I schedule these tweets. I don't really look at Twitter. I load it up and it goes. But I've been tweeting like a madman at my mayor, Eric Garcetti, and my council member, David Ryu. And David Ryu has been fairly good. However, the responses I've been getting from his office are saying that he does not support the mayor's budget. So I don't know if you know about LA. There's this fight between the mayor's budget and the people's budget. And the mayor's budget has $1.8 billion going to the LAPD.
Yes.
It's over 50% of, it's like 54% of the entire city budget. We're asking him to fund it. and
Right.
put that money towards education and other community services.
Mm-hmm.
And the people's budget does that. My council member, David Ryu, says he does not support the mayor's budget. He
Interesting.
wants to look at ways to reinvent public safety and blah, 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 blah. Got into this conversation with one of his office members, and deep in the email, it's like there is a revised budget on the table, which we all know about.
Mm-hmm.
He's taken $150 million out of the cops. That's 4.67% out of the $1.8 billion
Right.
budget. It's a drop in the bucket, and they're claiming we're defunding the police, right? I mean, maybe they're not saying that exactly, but they're saying we're taking money away, we're divesting this $150 million and putting it into social services or
Right.
non-armed safety officers. But it does, and this deep in this email is like he does support the revised budget. After all this campaigning, he's denouncing the mayor's budget. I don't support the mayor's budget. I don't, but he does support
semantically.
the revised mayor's budget.
Because that was enough. 4% was enough for him.
So that lit me on fire. And so I've been tweeting and texting and emailing, and they offered me a phone call with him.
Oh, I love it.
They
it.
offered me a phone call with
Oh.
my city council member, District 4 in Los Angeles.
Oh,
But so I just wanted to say these campaigns and this kind of tweeting and making noise and emailing, it works.
it does.
It does work. It does work.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully Facebook will listen to Unilever and this long list of other brands that are
Right.
withdrawing their ads this month and make a change.
Yes, and I would like to put a pro tip out there for all those folks who, because I'm not following a ton of people, it looks like I just got on to start trolling, quote unquote. So it's good to build up all of your media footprint,
yeah.
your
Yeah.
footprint before you start, so you
It's
don't get all
very
those
true.
annoying, like, who the hell are you, and why do you only have 7
Followers.
friends? Exactly. So just
Well,
a little pro tip out there.
I just looked, and I am following you, Christian. So.
Oh, see, you're one of my 7.
Yes.
I also wanted to squeeze in before we have to go. Netflix is moving $100 million into Black-owned banks, which I blew my
That's
mind.
amazing.
Because that's a good chunk of money when you
Yeah.
think about it. And Black-owned banks are where it starts in the communities.
Mm-hmm.
Because for a very long time, white banks do not, of course, if you are below a certain income level, you're never going to get a loan. But it's triple that if you are a BIPOC. So
Yes.
it just, my heart just, surprisingly enough, a large corporation like that can actually make a difference if they're putting their money where it counts. And where it does count is Black banks.
And what a simple thing to do.
Simple. I mean,
You
it's
just-
an investment, for God's sakes. They're going to see a
Yeah.
return on it. Holy shit.
Exactly.
I mean, the return isn't just monetarily, it's like socially, and it just strengthens communities. The
kinda wanna look
return
for-
is just huge.
I want to look for a Black-owned bank in my neighborhood because I'm at Chase and
Oh, actionable item, folks.
fuck Chase.
Fuck
Yes.
Chase.
Actionable
Fuck
item.
Citibank. Let's
Yes.
say that. All right.
Let's say that.
All right. Making a little sticky note right here.
Yeah, I'm putting it on my to-do list for today. Look
Awesome.
into
Let's share with
Black-
each other too. Because a lot of Black-owned banks are community or regional. So let's see what we can do.
Let's see what we can do. All right, we need to get along to our interview, but
Oh,
first,
yes.
couple things. Our website has a page called Do the Work, and on that page is a lot of great anti-racism resources. It's the topic of the day, but we want to make sure that this is a topic that does not fade away. And it's
Yes.
something that we continue to look at because our industry is plagued by white supremacy.
Yes.
You look around your film
100%.
set, and I know, Christian, you in New York maybe have more diversity than we do here in LA, but you look around a film set, it's a bunch of white dudes, and maybe you have some women, and
Occasionally, sure.
and very little, and very little BIPOC.
Yeah.
So there's some sources for you there to learn, support, and take action. And Christian, I want to feature. I know last week we featured a petition for Elijah McLean.
Mhm.
Today, I want to feature Andres Guardado, who was a security guard. I think he's like 18 years old,
Yeah.
who was shot dead by a LA County Sheriff's deputy earlier this month
It's nuts, man.
with his hands up over his head, kneeling. He ran away.
If you had the entire history of your people, anytime that they interacted with the police, had a very large chance of dying. You would run as well. And so the reaction to that could get you killed as well. What are you supposed to do?
Exactly. It's a heartbreaking story,
Yeah.
and there are 2 petitions on change.org. I'm going to put the link to both of them, or you can just search on change.org for Andres Guardado. Sign them. It takes 10 seconds, and it's a little piece of action you can do. So wanted to highlight that one today.
Yes. May I also highlight, too, that Breonna Taylor is no longer trending. Her hashtag is no longer trending on any social media. So it'd be great if you guys could get back out there and support that cause as well.
Jason Manz fell into the industry by accident in 1998. He came up through the ranks of production on both coasts. In his early years, he was a production manager, but he always shared an affinity for the duties of the assistant directors and the mechanics of running the set. So he joined the DGA in 2004.
Today, as a producer and first assistant director, he approaches each project from a different perspective with his knowledge gained by holding both positions. While he may be based in New York, most of Jason's career has been spent on commercial projects in Los Angeles, around the U.S., and abroad.
Let's take a listen.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd love to ask how your family's doing, how you're doing. Before we get started, how's everyone feeling?
I've been very fortunate. My family is great. My youngest brother, who lives in assisted living, he had COVID. It went, like wildfire through his house. But fortunately, he was okay, Listen, living in New York, I'm sure you may agree, and maybe you as well out West Lawrence, like I can count, I'm past both hands of people, friends who have family, not who have had it, but who haven't made it, and that's kind of crazy. That's staggering,
Well, I think because you're from Staten Island and how deep rooted you are in the New York community. Yeah. I definitely have relatives who have passed, but they're from the South. So
oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
In New York, I know tons of people who have had it and have made it. So I'm sorry about that.
And same for you, Lawrence. I hope you and yours are all safe and you haven't had to deal with any crazy loss.
No, a couple friends have had parents pass away because of it. So there is that. Nothing immediate to me. I had a couple friends who had it, but have survived. Yeah, thankfully. Yeah. So, Jason, tell us what we've been through a lot, I guess, these past 3 months. What was happening to you right at the beginning? Were you on shoots? Were you on jobs? What was happening when things started shutting down?
When this all started, it's funny. When it initially started, I was with my wife and kids on a cruise, on a Disney cruise. But how about that?
Probably the worst place.
No, exactly. But my wife does social media, so she had this opportunity. So we're down there with the kids, and that's when the first story broke about, there was a cruise ship in, I believe it was Italy at the time, that was held up, and they were stuck on the boat for however long. Yeah. And we were like, can you imagine getting stuck, the 5 of us in this cabin? And fortunately, I come back to, after that, came back to work, honestly, produced a job in New York, and a nice one, a 3-day shoot, which is like, I haven't done a 3-day shoot in New York because so much of my work is elsewhere. And then after that, I had an AD job, and then a bunch of jobs on hold, which started to push because the director didn't want to travel, or the agency was concerned, and the celeb, and that kept pushing and pushing. Well, exactly. And for me, I actually, that started pretty early. Like it started in February, and so it was like, for me, it was a long time without. And at a certain point, there was another job that I had that was a go, but then it got canceled in late March. So, and it's along with the other 2 jobs. So it's just, we've all had some sort of a downtime, whether it's, I want to take 4 weeks to go and travel Europe, or it's just slow because no one wants to come to New York in February and shoot. Any 3 of us on this call right now to then say, oh, you haven't worked for 3 months, is you would never.
Insane.
Never. You're lucky if we could pull it together in a 12-month period and have 3 months. So
I was in LA and I came back on March 17th, which flying on St. Patrick's Day
before COVID is something I would never have done. But I had to rush home I was in LA for 2 months prior. So I got home on March 17th. And within 2 days, we started up doing a daily podcast about this. And so when mid-April, I think, Lawrence, we started talking about how are we going to get back to work and what, and then we were interviewing people every single day about it. So I feel like we've been pretty rehearsed and in theory know what guidelines need to go in place. Exactly. And we've read all the white sheets and, DGAs put out stuff, SAGs put out stuff, IATSE. Each company has their own individual things. States are now doing it, like state of Florida has something. And so what I'm now wanting to do is find out really where the rubber meets the road and how these guidelines are starting to get implemented. Yep. So you were just in a hot zone, Miami, correct?
Yeah. And
job?
Yeah. Listen, going into it alone, before you get going, your head just starts to spin because it's like, what is it going to be like to be back on set with this? There's concern for, obviously, you want everyone to be safe. Your name is attached to it. And then it just goes as granular as like, holy, what's it going to be like to be back on an airplane after all this time? Yeah. So, right. Which is something that we're used to doing, multiple times a month. So to not have been on a plane since January, listen, let alone a New York City train or taxi cab since early March. And the first cab I went in was when I flew down to Miami on I think it was June 14th. And that's again, as a New Yorker, that just doesn't happen.
No.
So, going into it, you're like, well, what are you going to do? And you start to spin like, how is it going to all play out? You read the white papers and you start to formulate your own opinion. I was fortunate because in Florida, they've been open for a while. And so listen, in this business, you're only as good as the people around you. So I felt fortunate to have people that have been through it already.
Yeah.
I let them know I was fortunate to have that. And, but with that, we just sort of put that knowledge together and things that you want to implement yourself. And a lot of it is smart and common sense. But the biggest thing that I learned from my job, and I think, Lawrence, you were on that DGA Zoom the other day, and another one of the ADs on there had mentioned it, location. Yeah. Right now, we all know it's like, how are we going to jam 30, 40 people into a kitchen to have two people talk about mayonnaise, right?
Yeah.
It's like
or cereal. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, how is that going to happen? And because honestly, in commercials, we do that often. We're very happy to go and do those mayo and cereal jobs because they put bread on the table. But we didn't have that. We had an exterior, at the back of a moving truck. We had an interior. We had to build out a retail space. So we went into a car dealership, and it was massive, and we just made it smaller. And the one good thing about being down there in that particular space, you go into this space at 50% capacity. Yes. So we were allowed 78.
New Jersey is saying that right now. So.
Right. And it makes sense. So with that, we were at 78, cut it in half, 36. So I was like, let's round down. Let's go closer to 30. And just to be a little bit safer, put people on the doors and be smart about it. When talent is on set, 10 people max around them and space them out. And that's what's tricky.
The first AD is the safety officer on set, of course. But did you have a separate safety officer? Because I know that position has been spoken about.
There was someone who was responsible for being a COVID manager. And then rather than having one medic, we had a second medic just because you want temperature checks. And again, it's purely a precaution. Fortunately, there was no reason for that, meaning there was no emergency.
No need.
At that point, it's like, if you're going to have extra people, we're going to have to attribute it to the safety and well-being of everyone. Wherever I could, and I did this with every department, I'm like, we're not going to be key in 3 and 4 and 5. Like, let's cut. And it's not, listen, at a certain point, like, yes, we're producers, we have to watch the line, but that wasn't really about money. That was about just common sense. Because the one good thing about this job, which I'm really excited about, is that and SAG was on set to make sure that their members were protected. And I'll get into that more in a second, but it just helps us all as an industry, right? Like, the job was successful. And you pray that you find out, like, in a week or 2 weeks from now that nobody is going to come back and test positive. Fortunately, I just received my call this morning from my test on Friday, and that was negative.
Oh, nice.
Good. So let's dive in a little bit. How many did you have in Grip Electric Camera? Like, what does your crew look like by department?
The way we did it too is, I'm just trying to give some context before I get into numbers. We had one day with the exterior. Right there we had, I want to go back and look. I think it was on set like maybe a key and 2. And then we had other people that would go and they would do the pre-light for the other location. So, and that was the other thing. It's just like, spread out the amount of time we were in these locations. So, the location where we built out the retail space, and it was a fairly straightforward build, but we went in there on Saturday, we prepped that location, cleaned it and buffed it and just sanitized it. And then started to build on Sunday, finished building on Monday, went in the afternoon to pre-light Monday afternoon. So this way, Tuesday morning, it's not the, everyone tripping all over each other. This way we shot and we were already ready to go, just to then minimize the amount of time on set for the shoot day. And we're even open to the fact if we had to come back the next day and wrap out. So now you're talking about a location that would have normally taken 2 days, you're in for like 4 or 5. Yeah. And again, fiscally, you're like, well, all right, maybe that's a little bit more, but in this environment, it's just, you try to just be smart and responsible.
So you had one day of kind of prepping, another day of build, another day of pre-light, 1 day shoot, 1 day wrap, something about the effect. Okay, exactly. Makes sense.
And it was nice to have SAG there on set because and listen, there were plenty of calls with that. I don't know if you've heard that they're asking to have calls with the production. I mean, A, they want to hear from their members if they get called for a job, and then B, to know what are the protocols going to be. One thing we did there is, you had talent that needed to be really close to each other. So rather than just,
do they know each other?
That was exactly it. So don't just cast people that you hope will be okay and hope that they won't be sick or they won't test positive, but go with people that are quarantined together. Go with a couple, or listen, it doesn't have to be a couple. We have plenty of people that we know, friends of quarantine for 2 and 3 months, and that's the same thing. That's applicable. So,
I mean, there's definitely like groups of people who are quarantining together, like in certain buildings. If everybody has young children, we've been hearing stories. Basically, if you have young children, people are quarantining together within a building, or blocks of people, or backyards. So it's been interesting. You can definitely find it, but 2 SAG people.
No, exactly.
Seems a little tough.
And you want to make
you're gonna have to Taft Hartley them or something.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, it was tough. And and the other thing is like with that, it's like cast a wider net, like cast in multiple cities if you have to. It's like again, these are all extra precautions, that cost money. But
no, it all should cost money too, because it's about people's safety.
Right. So do you want to spend the money now, or do you want to spend the money later when it comes out that, and so people become litigious to find out, well, you didn't do this. Everyone was walking around cavalier, no masks. You jammed us in a space. And that's the way we need to think now. And it's really, I mean, listen, that's the way you should be thinking about safety all the time, especially as as producers and as AD, like, you have to think that way because it's your job.
So by the time you got on set, I just kind of want to get a picture of the crew again. So how many people were in grip, camera, electric, like actually there on the actual shoot day?
On the day, there was your regular 2 and 3, but then spaced out to have people come in and wrap out, and, never having more than, say 10 people on that set at a time. Now, listen, we're human beings. So like, was there an opportunity where like, if
of course
the art department or grip, whatever, like, and you could walk over in between and you're talking to someone and someone didn't maintain 6 foot, of course that happens. That's human nature. But it's like, another thing is like, you just have to self-police. So maybe like during the scout and during all this, reminding the keys, like, hey guys, you just remind your team that we just have to do this. Is someone going to step away and make a phone call and have their mask on their chin because they were on the phone and it's 95 degrees and they walk back and they forget to put
smoking.
Well, exactly. Remember and remind it. Hey, put your stuff on. It can't be up to the producer. It can't be up to the production manager and just the ADs. It's got to be everyone. Even as far as like, listen, the PAs, like, hey, listen, don't feel funny about going up to the DP and just reminding them, because there's a lot in their mind. They may just forget. This is a new thing. We have to retrain our brains. So
yeah. So did you have a safety meeting at the beginning of the day that kind of explained that, and you empowered the PAs to help do that kind of policing?
Sure. Send out long emails beforehand, just explaining like, this is what's going on. Safety is going to be taken very seriously. And I took it to the next step with the talent, because we travel talent from LA, and I called them all personally just to be like, listen, I know that
absolutely have to
make it a little more personal, and just like, this is the situation, ran down everything. Do you have any questions? We're just kind of smart with the talent in particular. One thing we did was, rather than picking them up from the airport with cabs and whatnot, we asked them to self-drive to the airport in their own vehicle, pay the parking, which is more expensive maybe than a cab. And then when they get to location, you get a rental car and they drive themselves to and from set. And
I think that's smart.
Go further to utilize that vehicle. And even the locals did this, but utilize that vehicle as holding. with the permission to SAG. This wasn't backdoor. This was like, we want to do this because we don't want to stick people in a box in a motorhome. Mm-hmm. We'll have an exterior area for them as well if they want to just get some air, but just that air-conditioned vehicle is on set. It wasn't a way to like, oh, I don't want to pay for a motorhome. It was more like, it's just another step. And listen, in reality, it's probably more expensive to have rental vehicles for everybody for like 8 people that came to town. So it's when you advertise over the week, you're probably paying more.
So then I want to get in the nitty-gritty of hair and makeup and craft service.
Sure.
And food. Did you have proper catering, or was it drop-off packaged food? Or
it was catering. Was you walk up, someone took your order, handed you like a sort of McDonald's to-go box. There's no, if you wanted a fork and knife, it was cafeteria style fork and knife. Right. Mm-hmm. There's no juicer machine anymore. There's no tray of there's no tray of like croissants.
No pass-arounds.
No, exactly. When it comes to the caterer. And then with Crafty, it's like, here's a water bottle for everybody with your name on it. You want it, you take it yourself to craft service rather than asking the PA to grab it for you. Crafty pushes the button on the cooler and just drops your Gatorade or your water or whatever into it.
Interesting.
How did that work for camera? Because they can't, like the first AC can never walk away and do that.
Listen, at that point they'll fill their bottle at the beginning of the day, and we happen to have 2 cameras, so if there was a world where someone had to sneak away, they could. And listen, there needs to be time. Like if I want to go and step away to get water, especially if you're someplace hot, you have to take those breaks because this is even pre-COVID.
Oh, it's Miami.
Right? Exactly.
In June. Yeah. It's like the worst place on earth in my opinion. It's like hot and I know I've filmed there with John Winter a very long time ago. And we film, I know. And it was just, it was oppressive. Like I was like, I'm never coming back to Miami between May and September again.
Well, exactly. But I'm sure they'll be very busy now because they've done it and they did a good job with it because they know that they have to. And listen, I mean, they know, I think a lot of eyes are on them.
Mm-hmm. I think that Florida's rolling back their stuff, though. I think people are nervous to get down there because of the sheer amount of cases that are happening. I've heard of jobs canceling there last week.
I had a friend down there who's actually still down. I don't want to start mentioning names in business, but there was concern about that. And I wondered at one point, because we were down there while all the numbers were increasing, and you wonder, like, are you going to have an issue? But I mean, listen, look at LA, right? Like there was the AICP briefing yesterday. It was curiosity, like what's going to happen with LA? And I think what came out of that was that there's no plans to shut down filming again, with the exception if the numbers start to get so crazy where hospital beds start to become a shortage. Yeah. So at that point, they're like, okay, we're open. And they're not going to really limit the number of folks on set. Now, each job is going to be listed case by case, explain it. And I'm sure there's going to be a backlog because people are just itching to be it advertised or start shooting and that sort of stuff.
Brands need to have their message out.
Yes. Well, we need to make the donuts too, right? So
capitalism needs to happen.
So that was interesting because like you look at like a market like LA where like that's where this industry is built, and like they're saying like we're going to do it and we're not necessarily going to limit your numbers, but again like you have to be smart about it. I had gotten a call to go to, I think it was Atlanta or wherever, and it was a big execution, a lot of people, stunts, and it's just like, I'm like, are we ready for that right now, I want to, but it's just like, I'm like, you get concerned, like, is it irresponsible right now to do something like that?
Well, I've certainly turned down work in this period, but now I have a company who's willing to listen to every single thing that I'm telling them to set up the job the way that we want, and it's a stage job. 2 days in New York, and we'll see what happens. I'm also considering, 20-minute breaks for the entire crew every 2 hours just to give them mask relief, and considering doing that every 2 hours and doing French hours if everyone agrees to it. Yeah. That way we're not all sitting down, at the same time for a meal.
Yeah.
I think that there's multiple ways to look at it. I think it just has to be you're creative, how many people you have on sets, whether you're a client attending or not. There's so many factors that you have to, worry about in there.
Yeah.
I want to know about your COVID supervisor. Who did you have? Who was that person? How did that function?
Were they a medic?
No, he wasn't a medic. He was a coordinator type. Anything, temperature related and that sort of thing. I mean, the medics dealt with that. And it was just, checking with crew and making sure, like just basically asking questions like, have you been exposed? Have you had a fever? Had you had the dry cough? Anything like that. And the temperature checks.
Did you take temperatures in the morning?
Temperature checks. And then when you do a temperature check, you get a, whatever the color band was for the day, yellow, green, whatever it was. And everyone, doesn't matter whether you're the agency or whether you're the director, everyone. Sure.
Was it a client attended shoot?
We had 2 agency, which, listen, the idea of just having everyone remote itself is tough. I found it to be helpful to have that, just because like there sometimes has to be that sidebarring. I've done fully remote shoots as well, and it's kind of tough, and you have to jump back and forth between Zoom rooms and that sort of thing. This particular one, it helped. It definitely helped. But that said, it's 2 more human beings on set, right? So now it's like we're adding to it.
Making them wear their masks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Having PAs tell the client to mask up. Yeah.
And it's stressful in Video Village, depending on what the setup is, because we had a 33-second delay. So now set is shooting.
Yeah.
And then it's going and it's getting put through VTR and they're uploading. It went out to a Vimeo live page. And by the time they were watching it, I'm calling rolling to them while we're already rolling, just to make sure they're keeping their eyes on it. Because listen, we've all been in Video Village for a long time with 15, 20 people, and it's hard enough to get them to look at the monitor in front of them while they're on set. Now when you're off and you're homeschooling a kid, or the Whole Foods guy comes to the door to deliver the groceries, or or someone's trying to watch,
walking the dog.
Yeah. Someone's trying to watch if more you are, you're not the father type of thing in the background. It's like, you have to wrangle that, and it's actually a lot more work, because then you're getting chomped over on from the walkie, like, hey, are we ready to move on type of stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, because they're still watching it. So there's a bit of that. Yeah. So there's extra time involved in just watching and getting feedback, right? So, and if you have to then go and play back and listen, it's just, if someone wasn't paying attention, everyone for the most part was paying attention, but there is a bit of lag in that. And listen, you're trying to keep the hours as packed in as possible, because you don't want people on set. So anything that takes more time, you're just like, could we just move on?
Right.
Yeah, I've been hearing someone's on that Zoom call said they had like a minute or a minute and a half delay with remote Video Village, which was just like, oh my God, that's torture.
Yep.
When you're trying to like beat the sunset or something and get a shot. So,
and we're talking about a minute to a minute and a half. To us, that's torture, but in the end, it's only 90 seconds.
Oh, exactly.
I know.
About what we're talking
it's a long time
here.
on the exercise equipment, but it's not, like
when we all first started in the business, can you ever imagine like that this would be possible to have a remote video?
No.
It's like sitting next to the guy on the plane, or the girl on the plane. It's like, I can't believe the internet's not working. But I think it's an old Louis joke, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, it's kind of the same thing. Like, it's like, let's acknowledge what we're talking about. It's pretty,
exactly.
It's pretty cool.
We used to not be able to film if you didn't have a little round plastic thing that went in the other side of the film camera to pick up the film on the other side, right? That little plastic wheel would ruin the whole shoot day.
Did you get the bag of cores?
Yeah.
So having a remote Video Village is quite spectacular.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you guys do any zoning? I've been hearing, a lot of shoots have done those different zones.
As far as a specific ABC, not necessarily that, but it was more to the point where you can go in now based on who's doing what work on set, especially when the talent was on set. Like, that was the thing, was like, you'd have X amount of principals, some extras, and you'd have an operator, the DP and sound. Again, we were fortunate, and that's why I was like, this is like, you get a little spoiled when you have a good location like this. You can keep your distance. And now with like remote focus, I mean, you can be, down the block in the basement, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're So, I mean, not quite, but you know what I mean. So we're fortunate with that, and to be able to be spread out, across a car dealership showroom, to then have the director's monitor. I mean, at one point we were completely in the other room, and we just get the voice of God with the microphone, and just again, you're direct. It's almost like a remote, but you're in the building, but you're far enough away, and it makes sense, right? It needs to be done creatively, but also then you're far away, and it's like, it still gets done. Is it a little bit like you have to retrain your brain?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you said the microphone voice of God. So you had a microphone and speaker set up for the director?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Not for all of the, it depends on the setup, but there were times when it made the most sense. Yeah.
The director was on set.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But far enough away.
Yeah. Right now, the directors of the 2 jobs that I have are waffling. They're not sure, which I think is interesting.
They want to be on set or not?
Yeah. I think it's all going to come down to what the numbers look like that week. I'll have to be there.
It's a proper set. Yeah, I mean, I've heard jobs like that as well. You have jobs that's partially remote. The director's not there. Maybe the producer is not there.
Well, the whole agency and client won't be there. It'll just be production and hopefully director, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll have talent on set, which I think is important to have a director there.
Well, and as far as with talent on set, another thing is obviously, I know you asked about hair and makeup earlier, and that's why it started early, right? So I mentioned everything with the car, but then wardrobe fittings. It was like you go to the fitting, no one was there. I wasn't there. Director wasn't there. Agency wasn't there. Everything was via photo. Just the wardrobe team, masked up. If we had face shields on hand.
Oh,
as
so
well.
it was a live fitting.
Well, with the wardrobe team, and then but one talent at a time, with the exception of the couple that we cast together, and they came together. Apart from that was, and we've all done these wardrobe fittings where we've got this one's here, we're working on 2-3 people at a time. Someone is sitting, they fall behind.
No, that's a 10-hour fitting with 8 people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and just with that, okay, get the approvals, and went as far as to like bag it up and pre-steam it and send it home with the talent, which is kind of crazy. We normally don't even, at a wardrobe fitting, let them take their own shoes home if they end up becoming part of the wardrobe.
Exactly.
But here, listen, it's a huge risk, but like whatever you could do to like try to mitigate any contact. I forget where it came from. It was a good suggestion, and I think that was good.
They each took home their wardrobe.
But the wardrobe had to be decided on at that moment, which was brilliant.
Right.
That was,
Yeah.
that was the only thing that came of it.
Sorry.
I don't know if they would wear an orange shirt. It makes me think of something. I was like, huh, what did you just say? So, we've all been there. But I mean, the makeup as well, right? They would do their own makeup. And the only reason not the only reason, but makeup was on set to make sure that they didn't go a little too Saturday night with the lips or the eyes or whatever, and obviously for sweat and whatnot. But again, the other thing is then now, okay, I'm gonna take my mask on and off during takes, but I'm like, do it whenever you're comfortable. Like that's you're right, but also just you feel it out for yourself. If we're far enough away from people, maybe you want to be able to breathe. You're off in a corner, you're like 20, 30 feet away. Again, we had a large location. We were fortunate. But like, if you keep going like this, you're going to have to get touched up. And now that's another person putting their hands all over your face. So do you want to, and again, this isn't encouraging no mask. It's just like, it goes back to the self-policing idea. Just be smart. Don't put yourself at risk if you don't have to. Don't put others at risk. If you're standing next to somebody and you're like going to be coughing all over you, put your mask on. Be smart.
Well, some personalities lapse into previous behavior before others do, if that makes sense. Like I've spoke to somebody here in New York who was just like, she was a little freaked out actually about how her set went because everybody was so excited to see each other. Production manager was walking around telling people to please distance and nobody was listening. And it just becomes it just starts. And then if you let one instance go, people just, they get comfortable around each other.
That's a bummer to hear just because I was, the one thing about Florida, like, you walk on the streets in New York, I feel like you actually see people listening because it's been like banged into our heads for so long.
Yeah.
Down there, it was just like plenty of folks walking the streets with like, not even, I mean, at least wear the mask around your neck, like at least have hang it from your ear. Let's try. But like there was, I mean, apart from when we were on set, I feel like there wasn't really, and like on set, there was no one messing around, but like, come on. So, and you wonder why.
We call them the 5Gs.
Yeah, we wonder why these municipalities are like that. So but I get it. To be away from set for so long, you're like, this is crazy. You can't imagine it. So it's.
Did you Airbnb or were you at the Raleigh?
I was in a hotel. I was in a hotel, and it had just opened up actually 2 days prior. Like they were closed. You imagine a hotel closed for like 2 months. It's mind blowing. Yeah. And it was on, it was right in South Beach, and it was quiet to see South Beach like that as well. Like, which is kind of what.
It was dreamy. I know.
I that's what I wanted. Like, I didn't want anyone in the hotel. I'm bummed that they weren't making money, but I was happy. I never saw anyone in the elevator with me, so that was nice.
Right.
Was there any aspect of this shoot that had your attention the most concern, or the most questions about? Was there any one sort of scene or shot or scenario that kind of worried you, or logistical point?
Logistically, I mean, it was more just overall, and I don't want that to come out as a lazy answer because, again, when it comes down to the creative, apart from the talent that was close to each other, which was we cast for, it was for the most part straightforward. It was just more like the idea of like, how is it all going to go? Is it going to be safe? Because listen, the bottom line is, and I had when I called the talent to tell them this, I'm like, listen, we're going to take this very seriously. We're going to put all this stuff in place. And in the end, can we guarantee it? No. You can go on your way to the airport. You can go and stop at 7-Eleven and grab a coffee, and the guy could sneeze, and there you go. Or, the scripty can be, her kid had a friend or his kid had a friend and came over the day before. You don't know, right? So just to be completely transparent, like the bottom line is until everyone is getting stuck with a vaccination and we all have it, it can't be guaranteed.
You cannot
reality.
guarantee anything because you can't control what people do when they're not in your 10 hours worth of time.
Yeah. Well, look at Florida. They closed the beaches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to do some billing messed up, with my hotel. How many times has that happened? The hotel messes the billing up. Like, that never happens.
Or they never have the director's reservation
Yeah.
when he checks in at 10 o'clock at night for some reason.
I called them yesterday. I'm like, where is this? Come on, this job, we want to close it out. And I asked them, like, are you guys seeing any fallout from this? Like, they have had cancellations now. So just here's an example of a business,
really?
not ours, but it's in our industry because we need hotels to do shoots, but they're taking now a further hit because of the closure, or I don't know, what's it called, the reclosure of the beaches and any of the businesses where they're starting to tighten up again. Yeah. Like, that's for us, it's really tough in our industry, right? Because we can't work remotely. Like, my wife has been fortunate. She's been able to work remotely. There's people, who have banking jobs and mortgages, what have you, or writers, they can work remotely and still make a living. For us, we can't. So when you see people that are messing around and that haven't taken it seriously, and we get into a situation like we're in now where the numbers start to surge again and you're going to start to see closures, it's a kick in the shorts for us because we can't work remote. Listen, we're fortunate to do a couple of Zoom jobs here and there, but at a certain point, that's old.
How many can you do?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really old.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
well, can I ask you about the SAG supervisor? I've had multiple SAG folks over the years on my sets, and even before, the last job I did in LA, we had one because the agency wasn't signatory, and so because of that, they now send them out, which I love. They're overseeing their talent. Is this a new mandatory thing that's happening? They're just coming out to make sure that all the COVID stuff is happening, right? But they go into your crew count, I'm assuming. So you have to.
Yeah. Well, that's just it, right? So you have that person come to set, and it's, if you were at 48, now you're at 49, and it's another person that has to be temperature checked and go through the whole thing. I don't know the answer to the question as far as if it's a new thing all the time. I mean, we had a call with SAG, with myself and agency and executives from the production company. So there was no surprise that they were going to come. And in the end, like I said, I'm kind of happy that they did, because they know that there is a world where it can be done properly. Now, listen, can you always maintain 6 feet of distance with actors on camera? Like, to say that that's going to happen is unrealistic. And that's something that I said to them. I'm like, I don't want to just go into this and just sugarcoat it and say that it's going to be like this at all times, because we know that it's not the reality. We cast for a couple that's going to be close to each other, that's fine. But you're going to get a little interaction. And they understood, and they were understanding with that. Like, okay, and they just, when you're done, go apart.
Yeah.
And when you can, and be smart. Let's talk about it with our crew. If you're going to have 4 grips pick up a dolly and they're going to put it on the tracks or get up the steps. Last time I checked, exactly. A dolly's not 6 foot long. So even with once you put the bars on to lift it up, so it's gonna happen. But again, put your set, be smart. And space back.
That's when the masks come into play. And, I think what we've learned over this time is viral load, how much time it takes to be in contact of someone's breath or whatever. And you need to get a certain amount of virus particles into your system. You got to get in close to do something and move something, do it, and then step away.
Yep.
Keep your mask on. That's about all we can do. Right.
Absolutely.
Do you have any advice for others out there that maybe have a job coming up or ready to go back to work?
If we're as fortunate, like Christian said, she's spoken with, be it the production company and or the agencies, and you can have input, or if even the companies can have input or just notes about what the creative is. And this isn't forever, right? This is for the foreseeable future. But let's not go and write something where we're going to jam, multiple people in there, because listen, we can all say we're going to go small crews with a key +1, but then all of a sudden, if you have just so many people in the creative and you're going to do a big stunt and people are going to be sweating and spewing all over the place, you just need to take that into account. So be smart with that. If possible, the location, like I said, that was huge. And we could have ended up in a smaller place that would have worked. But
but why?
Well, that's the thing now, right? And it's like now a location isn't just about working creatively. Right. It has to work from a COVID standpoint. Okay.
Exactly.
Oh, great. That we have extra holding areas so we can spread out, and out back we can put a craft service set up. Sure, you can break at staggered times. You still have 2 people sitting at a 6-foot table on either end. You're not going to do 8 to a table like you used to. So there's that. You just need the space for that now. And it's tougher in New York, right? So it's going to be tougher, unfortunately, in New York because we're just always so jammed in. And there's the idea of people then reporting to set. People don't have vehicles. They need to ride the subway. They need to go into a 15-pass van to get to set.
Mass transit, asking people not to have mass transit, trying to find crew that have vehicles in New York versus not vehicles, especially if you're filming in New Jersey, because the laws look better there than they do in New York. I mean, there's so much to consider now about choosing your location. Also, too, like, what if your location owner gets sick 2 days before the shoot and decides not to have anybody there?
Absolutely.
Happened to us before the shutdown. So they were like, I'm sorry, but with the news looking the way it is, I don't want 45 strangers in my house. And we were like, dropped out the night before the shoot.
Right.
There's a lot of parameters that if you are able to, like you said, in advance, speak to the creative or at least tell everybody these concerns, client management, that will help you be able to choose at least the right location.
Yeah.
Expectations, right? So what I'd like to know is if you could choose anything to change in our industry moving forward.
As we're rewriting the playbook.
Because we had this great pause, right? And now we're coming back into it a little bit slower, a little bit more methodical. So is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, listen, there was that piece that was put out. I read it and I don't remember what it was about. Like, our industry before this wasn't really working.
It wasn't working. Yeah.
So, and it's true.
That went through like wildfire. We're
going to talk about it on the show.
Well, no, exactly. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to make a spoiler for it, but listen, it's true, right? We all do it, especially in production. You think about, because if we have a 14-hour crew day, what does that mean for production locations? You're there, it's a 17.
16.
At
17.
Least. And then the drivers. So, like, it doesn't work. And how many camera trucks crashing on the 405 or PAs falling asleep in a 15-pass van on their way back to Courier, or just any of this stuff. It hasn't been smart. It's not safe. Even if it's like, think of all the overtime for the people who get the overtime on set. I'm certainly not us management folks, but like, it's literally blood money. Not to mention it gets eaten up by taxes, but what's it all worth? And then you're pushing your shoot and you turn into like, you're going into the weekend or next days. You're fried for your families. You're less productive. That's got to stop. And that's had to stop for a long time. And I really hope that with this, it's really going to make that mandatory. And listen, if the union wants to impose a mandatory a shorter length of day, and that's it, not to say, you do this, you're going to owe me an extra pension day if you go over 17, 18 hours, but like, this is it. And they do it. But if it gets shortened, then so be it. And then we just have to come back another day. Or we have to adjust the creative to accommodate that.
The days are gone, and this is a theme of mine on the show, but the days are gone of getting, endless amounts of content, that you can cut into 40,000 spots, for across all boards in a 14-hour day. That's just gone. So what we have to do is manage their expectations going into it, understanding it's going to cost more and they're going to get less. There's going to be a little Wild West out there for a little bit of people willing to do it unsafely.
The days are gone, but now all of a sudden we have to protect for 16:9, 9x16, and 1x1 for all the social. It's like, okay, how do you get all five of the characters in that little one square? No, you don't. And that compromise. So it's like you're right, but that's the next time we're on together.
I know exactly. What are we gonna do?
Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, is there contact information you can share or a website?
Certainly. Yeah, my email, my name, Jason Manz @mac.com. That's probably the best way than cell phone.
We'll include it in the show notes too, so everybody can run to you with those emails.
No, I said, I was excited to come on because I feel I was fortunate to be able to do it and to do it, knock on wood, successfully so early in the process. And listen, I hope that I'm fortunate enough to do it again before September, because in my head when this started, I was always like, I don't see myself back on set. And this was before like day September. 1 in March. I was I'm like, this is. Everyone's like, probably May. I'm like, not happening. Like, I see it as like a July, August, September thing, and all roads lead to. We'll see.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So Jason is one of the first people we met in 2001. I think, even though we both started the same year, it took a little bit of time. He was a second ED and I was a coordinator. hit it off from there.
Totally.
The guy, my cousin from Staten Island.
Well, he is a wealth of information, and as fast as he spoke, I think I got it all. But it's all interesting, and I think it goes to show it is all doable. It just is, like we've been saying for the past 12 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. I don't know. How long has it been?
It's been 72 weeks.
Time and the deliverables. It's going to be more time, and you're going to get less yield on your dollar for these shoots because we have to put safety first in a very new way.
Well, he was very thoughtful about it, and he had a crew that he trusted. I know I've worked in Miami several times. I'm sure he has too. I'm sure it was a tried and true crew that he worked with. So good on him for doing it properly. So
exactly. Well, thanks to Jason Manz for joining us today. Again, you can reach him at jasonmanz@mac.com.
This show was edited and co-produced by Rob Bloomkey.
Artwork and logo design by Christopher Daniels.
And our music was composed by Kyle Puccia.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We are back next week. Until then, stay safe, stay connected, and stay active.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, clean your phone. And it's very, very, very important for us to all keep wearing these masks. I promise. It'll get us back to work sooner the more we wear them.
It's more important than ever. Send us your emails or your voice recordings to producershappyhour@gmail.com.
Lawrence, how can people reach you if they want you?
2 ways. LawrenceTLewis.com or for voiceover work, voiceoflawrence.com. Christian, how about you?
SisterChristianProduces.com.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.